I want to thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Christine Ackerman, the superintendent, and I want to welcome Dr. Adam Pease. He's our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, and he will be co-presenting with me tonight. So David Hayes is on the meeting as well. He is our communication specialist, and he's the person who's been behind the scenes in sending out all of our communications to you in relation to the coronavirus over the course of this past semester. So let me just take a moment to thank David for everything that he's done to keep us communicating with you in an effective and efficient way. And of course, Josh Block is on the Zoom as well. He's our technical specialist, and he's been able to navigate all the issues that we've had over the course of the year supporting our new learning environment. So I want to take an opportunity to thank Josh as well. All right. Okay. So this presentation is divided into three parts. The first part is an opportunity for me to provide some updates regarding our educational program and how we're supporting our students through the pandemic. I also want to share some data with you and talk a little bit about our testing approach. And then I've asked Adam to share with you some academic updates on our progress and particularly at our elementary and middle school level, as well as some of our thinking regarding what might be happening in terms of assessments in the second part of the school year. And then I'm going to come back on. I want to talk about the holiday break, and then we'll wrap up. We probably will go about 30 to 40 minutes. And this is being taped. So at some point tomorrow when it's configured, David will place it on the COVID website at the top of our information sharing section. All right, so at every board meeting, I share with the Board of Education our current status in terms of student attendance. So as you know, all of our students have the opportunity to attend school every day. So K-8, kids can attend for the full day. And then the high school, we have an AM and a PM session. So any students who want to attend Greeley may do so in the morning or in the afternoon. And then we have certain students that we are supporting with full day attendance to help them in their academic programming. I wanted to share with you some statistics regarding how many kids are actually coming to school. So you'll see at the elementary middle school level, I divided this up pre and post Thanksgiving. We have about 75% or above attendance every day. So we have a lot of kids choosing to come to school every day, operating within our pods and being on site with our faculty. At Greeley, we had a significant number of students attending until we started quarantining in October. And I'll show you our quarantine statistics in a second. But what had happened was we at the end of October, early November, we had multiple students who needed to quarantine for 14 days due to potential exposure. So since that happened, we've seen a significant reduction in the number of students who are choosing to participate on site at Greeley. But we've had tremendous attendance through our Zoom structure online. So I did want to share that with you. At this point, we're not planning to make any changes to how we've structured Greeley. It's my hope in the future that if there's some adjustments to the number of days that students may have to quarantine due to exposure, perhaps we'll see an increase in student attendance. We may see an increase in student attendance after the break period, but at this point, we've seen a pretty consistent 20 to 25% attendance in the morning and in the afternoon for Greeley kids. I also want to share with you that we had a really successful fall sports season, which was great. And we are planning on starting the winter season on January 4th, pending any kind of regulatory changes that we could receive over the next 2 weeks. All right, our next slide. So just in terms of how many students have had to quarantine, we've been showing this graph at every meeting. The blue are the number of kids who have had exposure who need to be out 14 days from the time that they have been exposed. And then the red are the staff members who've had to quarantine. And then the yellow are the students that weren't exposed, but they had to access remote instruction because of the number of staff that had to be out. And where we find that happening most frequently is at the middle level, because we have kids that have double English and double math classes. And so when we have an exposure in in one of those sections, there are multiple teachers that are impacted. So I just wanted you to get a feel for what quarantining has looked like in our district from the start of the school year to where we are currently. And you'll see that blip in the middle there was when we saw a lot of students that really start to choose to access remote instruction rather than coming in in the AM or the PM session. All right, so I wanted to remind you, now you know that I'm not sending letters out to the whole district when we have a case in a school with an exposure, but I did want to remind you that you have a way to access that information real time. If you go to our COVID section on our homepage, you click on that, and then you go to the school-wide notification section at the bottom right hand, you'll see there's a little bell there. You can click on that bell, put your email address in there, and then you'll receive a notification that we've posted a new letter on here. So then you'll know real time what other buildings are receiving for parents who live and kids who live and go to school in that particular space. So I do want to share with you, we've had to make some decisions about who is considered remote and who is not. So in many other districts, their remote access programs just not as fluid as ours is designed. So for example, there are many other spaces where in middle school and elementary school, you have to make a longer commitment to being remote than you do in our school, and the same for high school. But we purposely designed our system in a way that provides flexibility for our families based on their needs and their comfort level. But because we've done that, we've run into a situation where we have to, through a reporting portal that we're required to fill out each day for the Department of Health, we've had to make some determinations of who we would consider remote and who we wouldn't. So what we decided to do, and this is particularly important at the high school level because we have such fluidity in who's coming in and out, is we've decided that if a student is out of school for 3 weeks in a remote, we would consider them a remote student. And why that is important is because if a student who is remote shares with us that they have the coronavirus and sends us their test results, or we find out through the Department of Health, we have to account for them in our COVID report card for the New York State Department of Health, differently than we have to account for kids who attend school on site. So we decided that a 3-week window would make the most sense in determining who would be considered a remote student with coronavirus and who would be considered a on-site student with the coronavirus. Now, you may or may not realize this, but when we have remote students and we find out that they have the coronavirus, we aren't sending out notifications to the community because there's no impact on the school. We've been only doing that if we have on-site staff and students who have the virus, where we feel like it's important for the community to know because there could have been potential exposure. So we have made that designation based on the way that we need to fill out this report card. So I wanted to share that with you today. Now, the other thing I want you to understand is that we only know what we know. So we know if a student is positive because a parent has told us, because a student has told us, or the Department of Health has told us. If a parent has decided not to tell us and the Department of Health hasn't contacted us because there's no exposure, then that's not information that we would know or be able to report on the report card. And the reason I share that with you is because you can go on to this report card if you want to see what the trends are in our community with children. In order to get to the report card, you just have to click on our COVID resource page. And then at the external resources section, that's the top right, the first link has our report card there. You'll go right to this screenshot that I shared with you. And if you type in Chappaqua Central School District, you will be able to see all the students who have and staff who have tested positive. So you'll see the part that we've reported. Those are the individuals we know about. And then you'll see the other piece, which are reports that are generated from the Department of Health, which may be individuals that they know about, but we don't know about because it hasn't been reported to us because it doesn't impact us. Because we have children who go to school here remotely. So they're really would not be through contact tracing. If a parent has chosen not to tell us, contact tracers wouldn't call us because there'd be no exposure. And we have students that go to private school. So I just want you to understand there's a difference between what we're reporting and what you will see on that website, because there's different information pathways in terms of how we are reporting our information on the site versus how the information the Department of Health receives automatically through the reporting portals that pediatricians and other medical personnel are required to follow when there's a positive case. Okay, so I just want to shift a little bit. So I've been sharing with you, I just shared with you some of our quarantining, and what we found when we had our elementary kids on remote K4, we had to make some adjustments to their schedule because it was too much to be all day on Zoom. So based on some work that Adam had done with our staff, our administrators and our teachers, we've come up, and he has already shared this with you, but we've come up with some draft schedules of what K1 and 2 through 4 will look like if students are out quarantine, or if we're in a situation where we need to close for a longer period of time based on decisions made by the governor's office or the Department of Health. We just want to make sure that we're ready for our kids, and so that we have a structure that we can follow that's reasonable given their age and the level of support that they need in order to successfully participate online. And with that said, it's been really easy for the most part for our kids 5 through 12 to transition when we've closed because of our structure that's been in place. So kids have been following the regular schedule. Teachers have been able to use the breakout rooms. And instruction has looked differently this year when compared with last year because of the work that we've been able to do professionally to help support our teachers and each other be able to navigate the remote instruction process a little differently than in the past because we had that time to plan. So I did want to share with you this is our thinking that of course if we close, it will be live instruction. There'll be opportunities for students to be engaging with their teacher and with each other throughout the school day, but at the elementary level, it needs to look a little bit differently than it would if kids were on site, just because of the nature of what elementary education is, and then the ability of kids to be able to engage in learning in that way, and for a period of time over the course of the school day, using technology. But we've had a lot of, I think since we've closed, when we've had to close and classes have had to close, we've had a tremendous amount of success navigating that and supporting our kids. And it's a credit to our teachers and our administrative team for helping craft, we think, a schedule that makes sense based on student needs. So two really important updates. I know you all, as I have been getting the 6:30 a.m. Operu text reminding me to fill out that survey for my children and for myself, because the adults who work with your kids have to do screening every morning. So I just want to remind you that Friday is the last day for the Google document, so everyone needs to move over to Operu, and we are all expected to be doing that on Monday morning. Administrators will be following up with families that aren't completing the survey. You must complete that survey in order for your kids to participate in on-site instruction. It keeps us all safe. So if you're having problems accessing that, you certainly just can let us know and we'll help support you. I also wanted to share a shift in our practices. So I know you've seen my administrative team out there scanning temperatures, supporting families during the arrival process. But it's getting colder out, so it's harder to use those manual thermometers. So we have thermal scanners at multiple entry points in the building. So we'll be using those to help support the entrance process now for our students. But I also want to let you know we're scanning all the adults that come into our buildings as well. We think that's important. So we were able to transition to that procedure as well based on the new mechanisms the district was able to secure. Okay, now this is interesting. So over the course of the past 6 months, there has been significant adjustments into the zone strategy the governor has been using to determine which areas he is concerned about in relation to rising infection rates. So as recently as December 10th, new information came out that was shared with us on how the governor would, and the Department of Health would determine if any of our schools or a district at large was in any of the zones that would require us to test to stay open. So I don't want to go over the metrics with you now. You certainly can take the time to read them, and we'll post this online. But what you do need to know is that if we meet any of this criteria, and I'm contacted by the Department of Health or by the governor's office to notify me that any of our schools or our district is in the zone, then we will need to test students and staff in order to stay open. I will share with you, though, I do want to share with you, this continues to evolve and new information is released. So we have to be mindful of that, monitor this, and continue to be flexible around how we move forward to make sure that we are meeting the criteria to stay open. But as time moves on here, I find that when I'm looking at these zones, there is the metric to move into a zone is higher. So the likelihood of us moving into the yellow, orange, or red zone becomes less likely as new information is released. It doesn't mean we won't be placed in a zone. Some of our colleague districts have been placed in a zone, but the metrics to be placed in a zone have become more stringent over time. So with that said, let me share with you our thinking regarding testing, because some of it has changed. So the first piece that I want to share with you is that originally we thought we were going to test on Wednesday, but we can't do that. We have to test on Monday. And the reason we have to test on Monday is because we are going to be only testing people that don't have any symptoms. And so if we tested on Wednesday and we had tested students on Wednesday and we had students or adults who were positive, then I would have to go back and start excluding students from Tuesday and Monday that may have been in class with the positive individuals. So the only way to address that and to help support our kids to reduce the likelihood of them having to be in quarantine and excluded from school and having to access remote instruction is to test on Monday, because when we determine what the exposure period is, or the infectious period, it's 2 days from either the onset of symptoms or 2 days before the administration of the positive test. So if a student or an adult is tested on Monday and they don't have any symptoms, the infectious period is Saturday and Sunday. So then I don't have teachers and students that need to quarantine through our testing process because we don't have to go back to Friday. So we absolutely have to test on Monday. So the way that we see ourselves doing this, after we feel comfortable and we're set up and our community understands our process, is that Monday mornings will be our testing morning, and we will be operating initially in a 3-hour delay to have our students and our staff work through the testing process, because we can't have classes happening when we need to be testing people, because then we won't have students who will want to test because they'll want to be in class, and then we'll have to be arranging our schedule because we'll have staff that we have to test. So basically, we're going to have to run a delay schedule to be able to do the testing that we're going to require to do to stay open. Now, I say that knowing that it could potentially be that we find out over break that we're in a zone. If that happens, I just want to share with you that on Monday, the 4th, we will be remote so that we can get our process set up. And then on Tuesday, the 5th, we will begin to test. And there's one more adjustment I have to share as well. So Pulse MD is training our staff. They've been on site. They've been helping us with their planning. They'll be meeting with our nurses, because our nurses are administering the assessments, the COVID assessments for our students. We're responsible for all of that process. And the assessments we're receiving, as you may recall from my earlier notification, are from the Department of Health. But Pulse MD does not have, they notified me late last week that they're concerned they're not going to have the staffing to be able to support us on site with test administration if we have to administer the testing as frequently as we may have to if we're placed in a zone, which is not a problem because we certainly can leverage the Westchester Department of Health, and they'll help support our testing process. So I just wanted to share with you, while Pulse MD will be helping us with our training, they'll be helping us with our process, and they'll be helping us set up our testing procedures and training our staff. The Westchester Department of Health will be providing our limited site lab access, and they will be overseeing our testing process. And that's happened in districts all over the county. All right, so if we're notified we're in a zone, this is our current thinking, what our process will look like. So I will call you all, and I will send you an email letting you know that I have been notified that a school or the whole district is in the yellow, red, or orange zone. That'll be the first communication. The second communication you'll receive by email will be sharing with you the testing process, and I'll have two links. The first link will be asking you if your child will be remote or not. And in that link, you'll have to let us know if they'll be remote for the duration of the zone period. So that'll either be 2 or 4 weeks, depending on what zone we're in. If we're in the yellow zone, it's 2 weeks. If we're in the orange or red zone, it's 4 weeks. So you'll have to make a decision as to whether or not your child will be remote, because our testing percentage is based on the number of students who are on site. The second link will be a survey asking you if your child's going to be on site to sign up for testing. So once that communication and that process is completed, we'll send out another communication. And the third communication to you will be a notification if your child was selected for testing, because once we have all the kids in the pool and all our staff will select students and staff at random to be tested, then there'll be a sign-up process for you to make your testing appointment. And then we have required documentation that you'll need to fill out that we'll send to you. Then our plan will be that the testing will take place at Greeley, and it'll all happen in your car. So you'll show up at Greeley, and we'll have a screening station. And at that screening station, we'll make sure that no one in your car is symptomatic, that you have the paperwork, that your appointment's set up and completed. Everything looks great. We're going to send you to the registration station. If there's a problem, we're going to send you to an extended station to help support you, to get you to a place where we could send you into the registration station. So that'll happen at the front end. Then at the registration station, we're going to check you in. We're going to make sure your paperwork's done, completed. We're going to make sure that your screening process was completed at the front part of the screening process. And then we're going to send you over to station 3, and that's where we're going to do our testing. And that's where the nurses will be. They'll collect your paperwork. They will administer the COVID test by doing the nose swab. And then you'll receive a call from either the nurse or your principal if you have a positive result. And then we'll talk with you about what your next steps should be. So just so you can see the back end of what will happen at the testing location, we'll have multiple stations where multiple cars can pull up. The nurse will be out there at the front. They'll be engaging in the testing process. They'll bring in your information, and then we have a whole process that'll happen inside to make sure that your child's information is protected, that the test is in a secure site for the amount of time that it's needed in order for it to process correctly. That we'll have administrative support. We'll have technological support. There's a lot of data that we need to fill out and turn into the Department of Health to make sure that we're doing this appropriately. And so we have an entire back end process that'll be happening at the testing location, just so you can understand that we're making sure that we do this as professionally and as appropriately as possible, because we know how sensitive that this is for our students and for our staff. And then just So you also understand we will, just like we did at the start of the year, if we are in a space where we need to test, we will absolutely send you a video to review with your children, for you to review yourselves, that will go through this step by step so you can absolutely understand what to expect if you come to campus to be tested, and that you're ready and prepared with all the materials that you'll need for us to complete the process appropriately and under the required guidelines that are provided to us by the Westchester Department of Health. And so this is just a sheet of like everything that'll be happening in these stations. It's not something that you would need to understand, but I do want you to know there's so much back-end planning that's involved with supporting this, because we know it's really complicated. And it needs to be done in a way that absolutely is confidential and respectful of our students and our staff. So there's been a tremendous amount of planning that has happened to date, and there will be a tremendous amount of planning moving forward up until the day that we're told that we need to move forward with testing, so that we're ready and that you understand that we've done our due diligence to make sure that this is done professionally and appropriately. We're also going to start very slow. So we'll probably start with small groups of people at first. We'll assess our performance, and then we will iterate and make adjustments as appropriate. And we'll be working with the Department of Health and our doctor to do that in a way that makes sense before we start elevating the number of people that we bring in and test at a given time. So we're going to start off really small, and then we will expand as we evaluate our performance and grow more comfortable with the process. All right, so I'm just going to stop my screen share for a second and introduce Adam Pease, who will begin to share his screen, and he will walk us through our academic progress.
Thank you, Christine. So I've gotten the dreaded "your internet's unstable" a couple of times. I don't know if that's storm related. It has started to snow up here, so we'll see how that goes as we go forward. But I did want to give you just a quick update on the NWEA MAPS assessment, and also some things to expect other assessments as we work. So the first thing is our MAPS assessment student and parent reports have been uploaded into Campus Backpack. And Josh and I created a webinar for parents to better understand these reports. So if you have a child in 4th grade through 8th grade, this student progress report will look similar to this. You'll have multiple testing sessions, and you can see some data on achievement and growth. If you have a child in 1st through 3rd grade, this is the first time they've taken the MAPS assessment this fall, so their report will be a little bit easier to read. It won't have nearly as much data because they'll only have one test administration on their in their backpack. So like I said, we've sent out a letter with a webinar on how to read these reports, and also a letter that has information about how to access these reports in your child's backpack. So you can, Campus Backpack, you can see them there. And if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to their teacher, building administrator, or Josh or I. We're happy to help. And again, you can watch that webinar, a little more information about those reports. I did share a little bit of information about how we use the MAPS report to think about student progress during COVID. As you were, we were really interested to know more about the impact of the COVID pandemic and remote learning in the spring, as well as kind of a hybrid model this fall on student growth and achievement. So I wanted to share some of that data with you now. The MAPS score is a basic measure of academic progress, and they use a proprietary score called a RIT score, which is it's basically a measurement. You can think of it almost like a height measurement that a doctor would use, where the increments are spaced out evenly over the years that the students take that assessment, so that you can compare, a student's growth over, between one year and the next as they go through the system. So one of the things that MAPS does for us, or the MAPS assessment does for us, they give us this normed percentile, and the normed percentile hasn't changed because of COVID. So they have this nationally normed data where they're looking at how students typically grow across the country as they move through these assessments and through the grade levels. And so what we decided to do was compare our student performance to that normed performance to see if our students were maintaining ground and growing as they typically would without the impact of COVID. And then we could compare that and see the impact of COVID. So just to be a little bit more clear, we gave this assessment in fall 2019-20, and again, winter, that was all pre-COVID, and then COVID hit right after that testing administration. It was just a couple of weeks after that winter test administration that we had to go out onto this remote learning, kind of measure from fall to winter and another measure from winter to fall, so we can determine the impact of COVID. And you can see that red line is the nationally normed 50th percentile. And for a student, as they went through the fall, the winter, and then again the fall, you would hope to see that growth, and you see that growth in the norm, and you also see that growth in student A. So I added a student B. What we thought we may find is that you can see that student grew from the fall of 2019-20 to winter 2019-20. That was pre-COVID, and we weren't really sure what the impact of COVID would be and the disruption in the educational process on the students. So we thought we may see some regression in some cases. We thought we may see a little less growth than we typically had in the past. So that's really what we're looking for. We're trying to determine the impact of that disruption on our students. So this is our actual data. This is students in grades 4, 5, 6, et cetera, through 8th. And you can see our overall percentile rank for the grades. So in their normed data, they had the average student scoring obviously at the 50th percentile. That's how they normed the assessment. Students in 4th grade, our average student scoring in the 67.6th percentile. And you can see those percentile ranks through the grades. So what we did was we compared the ELA scores in the winter of 2019-20, which was pre-COVID, to this current test period. Now, what this graph is showing us is that if COVID didn't have any impact, if students continue to maintain their percentile rank or their percentile average, then we would expect these bars to be flat. And normally we're looking for an increase, but this would actually be a good thing in the sense that this is students maintaining their percentile rank. So that means they're growing as they should, despite the COVID pandemic. If we see a dip in that bar, as you see with that purple bar, that would mean that the students are losing ground on their percentile rank. So they're moving, for example, in 5th grade, just as an example, 70th percentile, and then they drop. So that's the data that we were looking at. And I'm going to share our actual data. So if we had a negative COVID impact, we would see a dip because our students would. It's not that they're not growing, it's that they're not growing as quickly as that national norm is typically growing. So we were really very surprised to find that this is our actual data. And so again, if those lines from the blue lines, if we just drew a horizontal line across, we would expect the students to grow at a rate where those bars would be flat. What we actually saw is we saw a gain in achievement.
What Adam was saying was that we actually saw some gains in our percentiles from the winter of 2019-20 to the fall of 2021. So our students were actually growing at a rate that is faster than the normed rate. And I'm just gonna share my screen so that we could get the slide deck back here. And we saw that, and this is almost what we would expect with our students during pre-pandemic times. And you could see in math here, we saw great gains over the course of this times. And you could see here as each grade level goes up, we see that the percentiles against nationally normed percentiles is increasing. And I think in both ELA and math, that's really a credit to our ELA curriculum and our math curriculum as students are growing and learning, and we're compounding those gains as time goes on. And I see, Adam, you are back. And if you want
to... You hear me now? I'm not sure what happened.
We can.
I completely dropped my connection, but Jeff, I appreciate that you just jumped right in. So, all right. So that's and actually right on cue, that was the math score. Josh oversees our math department and math curriculum, and certainly appreciate that that data gets better over time. So you see the strength in Chappaqua students build over time in math. So with that said, I will tell you that average can be misleading, and it's not our intent to mislead anyone with this. Very few students are average. Very few students see these exact gains by grade. And so it's important to note that we're looking at this data. Some students gained significant amounts while other students obviously struggled. And so it's important to us as we look at this data to make sure that we are identifying students that are growing, but also students that might be struggling, and to continue to support all of our students. So let me go back to share my screen. I apologize for the technical glitch there. And Josh, I appreciate you jumping in. So that's our math data. You can see there. If you have any questions about that data, let me know. We have been asked for some norm scores for the younger grades. We're going to provide those on our NWEA FAQ page. I will really caution you, the MAP scores are much more powerful when you look at individual students growing over time and how individual students compare to that national norm. There's lots of reasons to caution with regard to comparing your students to a much smaller data set and local data set, although I can understand why parents want that information, but I'd be happy to have conversations with parents about how that might be helpful and how it might be potentially detrimental, but we will provide that information on our MAPS FAQ. So let me just mention that I'm shifting gears a little bit, a couple of notes on assessments and grading. The first one we just spoke about, we did do the NWEA assessment in the fall, and it's up there in Campus Backpack. The January Regions exams have been canceled. Most of you that have high school students that might have taken those exams know that. So those are canceled by the state. We are planning to administer the MAPS assessment for grades 1 through 8. You can see the range there for the winter, as well as if you skip a bullet for the spring in grades 1 through 8. So the plan is to administer that test 2 more times this year. The plan right now is for the state to run the grades 3 through 8 New York State assessments. So those are still on. They were canceled last year in math, ELA, and then science in grades 4 through 8. Math and ELA are grades 3 through 8. So science is 4 and 8. Math and ELA 3 through 8. So as of right now, they're on as scheduled. Last year they were canceled. We'll see what happens as we move through the winter and the spring. And if they do get canceled, I'll let you know right away. The June Regions exams at this point are also still on. Last year they were canceled as well, but at this point we're planning on administering those. And again, we'll let you know if they are for some reason not administered. And then the last thing is, because our students, by and large, our schools have been open, we're really excited about that. And our teachers have been teaching, and our students have been learning, and our report card system and grading system has remained as it had pre-COVID. So we're going to continue with that, and we'll let you know if there's any updates on that as we move through the winter.
Thank you, Adam and Josh. So I just have a few final slides that I want to share. So the first is I want to just let you all know, if you could, can you move the slide, Adam, please? Is that our offices are closed starting Friday afternoon all the way through holiday break. So they'll reopen on the 4th. So I just want you to understand that, particularly our high school families, for their planning. I know that sometimes there's some documents that our families may need over break. I know there's some issues with the college process that we need to wrap up before Friday, and all that notification has gone out already to our high school families. But I do just want to remind you that our offices will be closed and our administrative staff and our secretaries will be off the next 2 weeks. So I hope they enjoy their holiday break, and I hope you also enjoy your holiday break. It's time for all of us to take a break, I think, from the everyday schedule and be able to relax and spend some time with our families. So I'm sure you can all appreciate that. I did want to talk very briefly about the holiday recess in terms of traveling. I will send this out to you on Friday, just like I did before Thanksgiving, just so you understand what the quarantine expectations would be if you choose to travel outside one of the states that are connected to us that have a required quarantining upon return, and then how you could test out of that quarantine based on Governor Cuomo's executive orders. So if you have any questions about this, please just let us know and we can help support you. It would be best if you called us before Friday. Any of your school nurses or your building principals will be able to help you. And if they have any questions, they'll call me. So we'll be able to support you and answer your questions so we can help you make good decisions. But when in doubt, if you're not sure, then I would just suggest that you go remote the week that we get back. If you don't feel like you'll be able to, if you're going to travel and you're not sure about returning to school, or you aren't sure you'll be able to test out of quarantine because of the limited availability of accessing COVID tests. The other thing I wanted to share is that, the holidays are such a wonderful time for so many of us to spend time with our family and our friends. But of course, there's the concern about the rising rates of infection across this country and in our community. So if you and your family make decisions to interact with other members of our community or outside of our community, I really would ask that you, the week that we return to school, that you make decisions regarding what is in the best interest of our school community. So what I mean by that is that if you are choosing to engage in activities with members outside your household, then it might behoove you to have your children be remote at least the first week that we return from holiday break, to keep us all safe. So I do want to put that out there. That's why our system is so flexible, because we certainly don't want to insert ourselves into your personal lives. That's not where we belong. But we do want to create a system so that you can make good decisions for your own family as well as the rest of the school community, which is why we've been so flexible with the remote option. So if you do decide to make decisions where you're interacting with other people, and of course that would increase your risk of potentially becoming infected with the coronavirus, either you know it or you may not know it because you're asymptomatic, I would ask that you consider accessing the remote instruction option, at least for that first week that we return from school. And again, if you have any questions about that, you can certainly let us know, and we will allow our K families to determine whether or not they would like to be remote right up until the morning of the 4th, to give you that flexibility, because I know that plans change over the holiday. And then Adam, if you could just move the last slide. Okay, so I just want to stop and just take a moment to really acknowledge and thank a few groups of people. So the first is I need to thank the administrative team. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I know that you knew that before we opened, there was a tremendous amount of work that needed to take place to open those buildings up. But in order to remain open, the assistant principals and the directors and the central office staff have been working all weekend long to address COVID-related issues, to address technology-related issues. They're often up very early in the morning to address subbing issues, to make sure that the buildings are covered so classes can go on as scheduled. So I just want to take a minute to acknowledge and to thank them. I also want to thank our custodial team for keeping our buildings clean and safe, for our staff and for our students to be able to attend every day. And our nursing staff, they've been handling a tremendous amount of incoming and questions and helping navigate the pandemic in a way that I can't thank them enough for all of their support. Our faculty and our staff are teaching way outside of the norms of what anyone could have anticipated teaching looking like when we first went to school to learn how to help support our kids both academically and emotionally. And I know that they're working late hours. I see when assignments are being graded for my own children. So I want to thank them for all that they're doing to help support our kids through the pandemic. And I also want to thank our Board of Education for giving us the structure and support that we need to be open for our families and for our students. I want to thank our parents. I want to thank you for trusting us with your children, trusting us to be open in a way that allows us to serve our children the way that we need to support their academic and emotional learning. Thank you, and thanks for your flexibility. I feel like I'm telling you one thing one day, and then a few days later I have to tell you something different based on new information. And everyone's been so supportive and understanding. I thank you for that. And I anticipate if we have to test, we'll be able to do it together in a way that makes sense and that everyone's comfortable with, based on my experience throughout this whole pandemic with our community. So thank you. And I know there's probably no students listening right now, but our students are really what's keeping us going. I think all of us. This is such a tremendous amount of work for parents, for our staff, for our entire community to support education in this way. And I know I speak for all of us in our school district that we are so grateful for the resiliency and the attitude and the excitement that our kids bring to school each day. It brings us such joy, and it allows us to continue to work and to figure out ways to stay open and to support education in the safest way possible for our kids. So this really does take a village to make this happen. And I think we're in a really strong place as a school community because of us all working together. So let me just end by thanking you all for being a part of Chappaqua and for helping us support our children in the way that they deserve to be. Wish you a happy new year, a great holiday break. And of course, there's many of us who'll be around if you need any support. We're here for you, and we will continue to be all the way through this pandemic. So thank you. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you all in 2021.